Absolutely. Thank you for that. And let me share my screen. I have a lot of stuff to go over today, so I hope you are all ready. So I will say a little bit more about this, but we have been really leaning into AI since like quite literally 2 weeks after OpenAI released ChatGPT. And we've really been thinking about how we move things forward in in the field of public health. And I got whole soapboxes on this, and I will spare you all. The one thing I want to share today is I'm going to go over a lot of materials in about 25 minutes. We give whole like 2 to 4 hour workshops on different aspects and details of prompting and how to apply it to projects. So there's a lot that I'm really condensing down into like the short, sweet things. But to start with, and I guess I do want to say thank you, Juliana and F&T Labs for inviting me. We run a community of practice here in the state of Kansas just for our health department leadership and trying to figure out what are the use cases they're doing there. So any chance we get to branch out, especially with some of the national community practices, I love it. I can't do any presentation without acknowledging Tatiana Lin. She works at the Kansas Health Institute. So again, I work at Wichita State University. She's kind of my partner in crime with all things AI. So we've been touring the country virtually and in person, doing workshops and trainings on all sorts of aspects of AI applications. So just want to give her acknowledgement. She's helped craft a handful of the slides and the details that we'll be going over today. This slide is old, but oof, boy, we've done over 60 plus presentations since we started this journey, and it covers everything from kind of 101 trainings to these types of prompt engineering elements, all the way down into actually helping folks craft their AI policies. And we always like to give a little bit of acknowledgement. There's a toolkit that's out there. You can use the QR code for it. I can drop it in the link a little bit later as well. But there is a fantastic guide created specifically for public health agencies that focuses on making sure that we have policies in place. All of our 101 presentations, we talk about conversation and guardrails. If we're going to do AI right, those are the things we need to know. What are the policies? What are my limitations? And then a conversation about how do we do this better? What is this looking like? So it's a great resource. With that, I want to throw out there, like Juliana said, we are talking about prompting today. So I'm not going over fundamentals, ethics, responsible use, policy, bias, different tools, use cases, chat, like not touching any of that. We're literally just talking about the conversations that you are all having with your generative AI systems. So there's a lot more stuff to be said, and I'm skipping it all. So if there's more we want to talk about, we can find time once we open things up. This doesn't apply across the board, especially if you have a paid system and you're actually getting into the weeds. But one thing I always like to prepare people for is we're going to talk about, just putting your prompts and details into systems. If you are using a free software, you better make sure you are aware of the privacy piece and where that information could be going. So if it's anything that's proprietary or anything that's private, just make sure you're very aware before you start doing any of the things that we're talking about today. So again, we're focusing on tips and tricks for better prompting. I know that there's a lot of different systems out there. This doesn't capture everything, but when we talk about generative AI systems, I'm talking about your conversations that you have with ChatGPT, Gemini, Copilot, Claude, Meta AI, which I am just now starting to really explore and see what's good about that system. Perplexity, if anyone does research, dear goodness, Perplexity is your best friend. And then, of course, Grok as well. And again, there's more, but this is kind of the overall piece of it. A lot of people will ask me, okay, well, which system do you use? It is honestly based off the use case and based off the improvements that each system has, because it seems about every 3 to 6 months, the systems will upgrade and change and they get vastly different. But if you do a specific type of thing like policy work, and you try ChatGPT, Gemini, Copilot, you're going to get 3 similar, but kind of different answers. And so once you figure out which one works best for your type of work and how you use the system, that'll probably be the one you stick with. Or your organization will tell you this is the only one you're allowed to use, which happens a lot as well. So what are we talking about in terms of prompting? I like to gauge everything in this low risk activities. What are the things we can do that aren't going to hinder us or be a big issue or get us into trouble? So low risk AI use, data analysis, policy pieces, and careful on the data piece. writing and editing documents, proofreading, those sorts of things. We say administrative functions. My goodness, drafting documents, agendas, minutes, all of those things are so fantastic at saving time. And then, of course, there's the communication piece because we all sometimes don't say things right. And maybe there's better ways to do it. And these tools can really help us be a sounding board for that. And I always add playing devil's advocate. We're going to talk a little bit about some of the cool things, but the brainstorming creative piece of conversation is my #1 use of AI. So with this kind of frame of what we're going to be talking about on the prompting side, I always start out with this simple concept. What do we use these systems for? 90+% of the time, it's always going to break down into these 3 categories. We're assessing something, we're brainstorming about something, or we're actually creating something new. It's not always in that order, of course, it goes back and forth. You can do multiples of these on the same project, but this is generally what we see. Help me assess something, help me brainstorm about something, or help me create something from scratch. So what does this look like on the assessing side? And these aren't the best prompts in the world. This is more just about giving you an idea. When we say we use it to assess, review a draft of a new policy of some kind, can you critique its comprehensiveness or suggest any ways, areas that might need more detail, clarification? You can compare and contrast 2 programs, and whether you just explain them or you drop documents in, whatever that might be, you're asking the system to help assess or analyze some aspect of whatever it is you're looking at. So assessing. Brainstorming, you can ask it to help understand topics, be creative, or what are creative practical ways to engage underserved communities in a placemaking project. So if you have a grant application, I always say, dear goodness, don't let the AI write your grant. We can get that's a whole other training that we do. But we want to use these systems to brainstorm because they can come up with really brilliant ideas that we can take those back to our folks to see which ones will actually land and work in our community. But they can save us so much time in doing that. We also do a lot of training around policymakers. And if anyone deals with city council people, county commissioners, they're expected to know a lot. And one of the things I tell them is don't use AI to try to learn everything in the world. That's why you have experts in their fields, right? In your health department to do public health. What you should ask these systems is to help brainstorm questions that you should be asking, because you may not be able to learn all the things, but you can learn what types of things you should be asking and leading into. And lastly, on the course, these systems can generate things from scratch. So whether it's an agenda or a checklist of some kind, if anyone does quality improvement, I love doing quality improvement with AI projects because it's so easy now to do things like SMART objectives because these systems can really draw those pieces out and make sure we're doing it correctly. So prompting. Prompt engineering is the term that we give of basically giving good prompts, and you'll hear a lot of stuff about context engineering. Everyone's trying to come up with new buzzwords, but really all we're talking about is doing prompts well. And the prompt is what you put in this system to get a reaction. My favorite example, and if you've ever heard me present before, you know it all comes down to food. So if you go into a diner and you sit down and you say, feed me, you're going to get something. You'll get some strange looks, but you will probably get some type of food. And who knows if that's what you want or if it's something you're allergic to. So when you go in and you sit down, you review the menu of options and you can clearly say, I want a cheeseburger, I want it medium well, I want these types of toppings, here's what I want for a side and a drink. You get what you want. Prompting is no different. So while sometimes we might go to these systems when we don't know what we're looking for, and that's okay, you can brainstorm. But once you have an idea of specifically what you want, you really need to make sure you are getting into the details in the right way to get what you want out of it. All right, so good prompts, that is the goal. And again, just like the last bullet, just like any tool, the more you use it, the better you get at this, the more you practice, the better you will get at prompting. To start off, these are the big 5 things I like to tell people. First of all relevant context, make sure you're telling it the details of what you're after. I hear a lot of people say, I tried ChatGPT, I didn't like it, I dropped an email and said, make this better, and what it did made no sense. Make this better is not a good prompt. We have to know, like, what's the point of the email? What are we hoping to get away from it? Those sort of things. Set a role explicitly. If you don't know what a role is, I'll dive into that, but this is an opportunity to completely change the context and dynamics of what you get out of the system. One of the favorite things on outputs, think about this in two levels. The form, like what do you want in terms of a format, a length, a structure, and then the function. You can literally tell the system, I want to convince my boss, persuasion, to do X, Y, and Z. And that will dramatically change whatever it puts out because it knows what you're after. Context is huge. Be specific in what you want. Provide any and all levels of material. There's a lot of times I take I call it chicken scratches, just like a couple of random words I get from a meeting. And if I want to brainstorm about what was talked about, you can drop those in. You can drop documents in, minutes from meetings, whatever it is that you can give as an example, like use those materials because the more it has, the more it can do. And then lastly, don't just tell it what you want. You can also tell it what you don't want. So think about it like the negative side of the prompt. What are the things we want to make sure you don't do? You say, don't make stuff up. Don't do X. Don't lead me on about Y. If I'm wrong, tell me I'm wrong. So you can put some of those pieces in there. And what we often find is a lot of people struggle like to balance all of the things. So we talk about thinking formulas. And we got a couple of different formulas, and I got a link to some of these so you can take a look at them. Keep it simple. There's no perfect formula. These are just ways to get your brain to think about how do you provide all of the context that you need in a prompt. So APE, action, purpose, expectation. Whatever you're prompting, cover those areas. Define the job or task, explain the purpose, intended goal of what you're wanting to do, and then of course the expectation, the desired outcome. So in this example, review the script for our upcoming mental health awareness workshop and suggest edits to make it more engaging and easier for high school students to understand. So we're telling it what we're after and specifically who the audience is with this one. And then we add in the purpose. The goal of this effort we're creating is to increase student comfort in discussing their personal mental health issues. Now, what we want it to do, make a final version that feels conversational, informative, and inclusive. So we're giving it a script and we're asking it to do these things. So think through those processes. Don't just say, make this better or review this and give me your thoughts. Like specifically tell it what you're after. To get a little more complicated, RISE, role, input, steps, and expectation. Same concept, just structured a little bit differently. So in this, the role, the specific role you wanted to play, the input, it's that information source. If there's specific steps you wanted to take, and again, we're keeping with the expectation. So you might here act as a public health communication specialist and draft a clear and engaging public health message about the importance of childhood immunizations, provide a step-by-step guidance on structuring the message, including the attention-grabbing opening, key facts backed by data, and a call to action for the parents. The final message should be easy to understand, culturally appropriate, and formatted for a flyer or social media post. So if you were expected to create something around childhood immunizations, you could start anywhere in a conversation, but if you have a good idea of what you want and you can think through these sorts of steps, you don't have to land it perfectly. This will help you get more out of the system. And even though it's a little bit longer, one of the formulas we use that we hear is a lot of people's favorite is create. Very similar context, role, example, action, tone, expectation. So we're going to hit everything. So what we're really adding in here is the tone, so that desired tone and style that you want to put in it, making sure that we're giving an example, and it's similar to the others. So this might look like a new Medicaid marijuana bill has just been passed in your state. Give it a role. You are a health policy analyst preparing a summary for local leaders and stakeholders who want to understand what the new law includes. Right? That's a lot of information packed into one sentence. Action, write a 1 to 2 paragraph summary that clearly explains the main parts of the policy. Who qualifies, how patients access marijuana, rules for dispensaries, roles of physicians, and how the program will be monitored. Now let's talk about tone, right? Use a professional and plain language tone. We don't want it to get academic or anything like that. So, and then the summary, because we're asking it for a summary, should be concise enough to fit on a presentation slide or handout. Now, if this prompt doesn't get you exactly what you want, I don't know what will, but that's a good example of the detail that we want to start having in these prompts. And again, the formulas, it's all just getting you in the mindset of how to provide everything that you could possibly want in these systems. This isn't everything, but think about, should I tell it what audience we're after? Length, format, different elements for framing, especially if we're wanting something to be equity focused or wanting it to be prevention focused. Constraints are huge, so it doesn't give you a massive report out, and you are really just looking for 2 sentences to put on your social media feed. Time frames, time constraints, priority areas. You can talk about assumptions as well. And then if you need any references or you want to know where it's getting its information, just ask for it. Make sure that is part of your prompt as well. So again, formulas shape your brain in terms of how you're thinking about communicating with these systems. I mentioned roles. Roles is something that a lot of people might blow off and think it doesn't matter, but I really highlight roles because you can have a lot of fun with roles. And I say fun in the way of like generating material that is unique and different than other systems might. Not doing the 101 piece, but hopefully everyone knows these AI systems work on patterns. So it goes to the most common or expected piece. So however you can shake that up and change directions, like that's how you actually get a little creativity going in your responses. So the role adds so much just by, you are a or act as a, and then 1 or 2 words. It completely changes the output. It adds additional context. It can help improve accuracy if there's something specifically you're wanting, enhancing the tone or style. And it also saves time if you have to iterate over and over. We'll try it this way, do this. No, this is too friendly. I need it to be this way. Like the roles will completely just put all that stuff up front. And the roles are limitless. So I know this is really tiny font, but you can have creative roles, education and instruction roles, technical roles. And this is why it matters. There was a workshop that I was doing in Texas, and somebody was revamping a website for students in crisis. So like this was the website that students would go to, and nobody liked the website. And so they were using Chat GPT or one of the systems to do an analysis of that. And so as we were going through this workshop, we were talking about, using the formulas, and they were putting in something like, you are a user interface UI expert website developer, do X, Y, and Z, and like give feedback about what we need to improve on the website. And it gave some okay answers. And it was just a simple reframe. Don't tell it that it's a web designer. Tell it it's a student in crisis. And the response it gave was vastly different, way more helpful, and mirrored a lot of the things that they were hearing from students. So again, that role can be pivotal in completely changing the direction and the creativity of whatever you're doing. A lot of people, like the example I had, said something about, you're a health policy analyst. Well, flip that on its head. Don't tell it it's a policy analyst. If you want it to create a policy, maybe. But if you're wanting it to review it, well, now you're a Medicaid recipient, or you're somebody who does X, Y, and Z on the street. Like get some details, give it some fun roles to play, and just see how it shifts. And of course, if you're running boring meetings, ask it to help rewrite stuff in the style of a stand-up comedian or a pirate. Those are fun too. So I'll drop this in the chat, but we have something called the Kansas Public Health Collaborative that we run in Kansas. It's all free. It's just out there on the web. We have an AI and public health page. We haven't added to it in a while, but we have a document out there with all of these formulas and a couple of other things. So I'll make sure to drop that in the chat when I'm done sharing my screen, and we can make sure you can access those things. And I assume we'll be sharing our slides as well. So taking a step back, I gave you a couple of tips and tricks and some things to think about. We're going to go a little bit deeper on the next few slides. So we've been talking about some of the specific language and words to use. Now we're going to give you a little bit more. In 70% of my prompts, and every single prompt the same way, depending on how much time I have, I will say, before you do this, ask me up to, this is where I do the time, okay, 4 clarifying questions. And it'll say, okay, you didn't tell me what audience, who is this for? Oops. Then it'll ask some details about, what are you trying to achieve with this? You say you're trying to do X, would it be beneficial to do Y or A, B, or C? And so it gives me a chance to respond. And I literally just type in the questions, right? 1, answer it. And then 2, answer that question. And it's basically pulling out those formula pieces that I missed and it recognizes. So if you're working on something that's really important and detailed, ask it to ask you up to 10 clarifying questions before it runs your prompt. Life-changing. All right, another one, ask the system to generate things kind of in steps. So if I was going to do a presentation or write a document, I would always start with um, what's important about this field or this topic, and what are pros, cons, myths, fact, whatever it is. Get some details, and I would say, okay, I'm doing a presentation on X. Now generate an outline of what would be important to convey all of these things to somebody and give it more details. And then once you have the outline and you've got all the pieces pulled in there, then you can start grabbing those chunks and either writing them, creating your own copy, and then putting them back in and putting it all together. So again, using it to help brainstorm to get you your starting point instead of just write me a document. Another thing that's really great, if you don't exactly know what you're after, but you have you definitely have a proper request, you can have it brainstorm multiple things. So explore multiple approaches to how we're going about this. So write me three different or three different outlines, one for this type of audience, one for that type of audience, one that would be more persuasive and maybe one that is more informational. You can put all that in the same prompt, but I don't know exactly what I'm after. So give me options and then see what it'll generate for you. And then you can start going down that path. And the last thing, the number one thing, treat AI like a collaborator, not a vending machine of answers. That's what it seems like sometimes because it's really good at spitting stuff out. But I can tell you the number one reason people like looking over my shoulder and they scratch their heads like, why do you talk to AI that way? It's because I don't treat AI like a vending machine. I treat it, and a lot of people say this, like an intern. So what does that mean? It means treating AI like an employee because it behaves like a worker, not a system. So we have to treat it like a worker. And what that means, I hate that I got all these things in here with clicks. It is context sensitive. So think about you're working with a coworker. You don't say, hey, here's my email, make it better, right? You will say, here's the document, here's what we're after, here's what we're trying to do. Recognize that it's going to be inconsistent. It's going to give you bad stuff sometimes, or it's going to go in a completely different direction. And that's okay. You can pivot, you can redirect it to the right way, but you need to be watching those things. These systems require oversight and feedback. Again, it's not just a coworker. We like to say an intern because you want to give a little bit extra guidance and thought into how you're interacting with it. Recognize just flat out, it's really good at some tasks and bad at others. And every time there are updates to these systems, they get better. Hallucinations have been a huge topic of conversation the last 2 years, and they're getting so few and far between. The systems are getting so much better at that. But still be aware that they happen. And the last thing, and this we go over this a lot more in our 101 trainings around, think of these systems as fast, eager, capable interns, but they're not autonomous. You wouldn't just give a document to an intern and say, go figure it out, and it's going to be perfect, right? You're going to have to work with the system. So therefore, your prompting needs to look like good leadership. Think about your communication. Think about how you would use judgment to assess what's important, what's not, what you can get away with, what you want to put in the system, or what really needs to be held in check. Know how to guide it, review the work. I always say, I'm guilty of it. Lots of people have probably done it. You just copy and paste from the system. Don't do that. People know. So you got to know what you can get out of the system and what exactly it's for. And just understand that there's a shared responsibility. Whenever something comes out of these systems, you have to know what you're putting in there. So it all comes back to good prompting comes with critical thinking, not just what we're putting in the systems, but then what we do with it when we get stuff out of it. So it's okay to ask for clarifying questions. It's okay to say, give me a breakdown of why you structured your response this way. So challenge its assumptions. Ask it for alternatives, explore consequences and actions. You can say, you created this to help me, persuade this group, to do whatever it might be, whether it's boss, county commissioners, to vote for something. What are consequences of doing that? Or role play. I didn't mention role play. Role playing is one of my favorite things to do with the system. But you can have those types of conversations with the outputs. Don't just accept them and run with them. And I know, Juliana, you said not to promote things. My next slide, a little bit there. But we do a lot of training, like I mentioned before. Happy to have conversations. Love diving into these things, and everything we learn, we try to put in documents and push out to the world so that everybody can use them. So we're around. We love talking about AI. So just reach out to me, especially on LinkedIn, and we're happy to always help you all out. So that was my fast 30 minutes of everything I know about prompting good prompts.
Well, thank you. So I'm gonna stop the recording right now. And so